Commander Jace Hale stood at the wide viewport of Relay Station Kilo 7, a lonely outpost floating between dying stars. The void beyond the glass was silent, endless, and merciless. His reflection stared back at him, short dark hair, square jaw, and cold eyes that no longer remembered softness. It had been 3 years since the Dauntless Rift massacre, 3 years since he had watched his ship torn apart by Krell warships. The screams of his crew still echoed in his sleep, sharp and endless. The door behind him hissed open. "Commander Hale," said Administrator Moran, his voice nervous as always. "I found a candidate for the cook position you requested." "I asked for a cook, not a charity case," Jace replied without turning. His tone was hard, each word like steel. "She's qualified," Moran said quickly, wiping sweat from his brow. "Worked as head chef on an Etherean cruise liner before the war. Excellent record." Jace finally turned. "Let's get this over with." The door slid open again with a soft whoosh. A woman stepped inside. She was tall and slender, her movements graceful even under the station's artificial gravity. Her skin glowed faintly blue, like moonlight on water, and her long silver hair was tied neatly behind her head. Her eyes were calm but alert, like someone used to watching for danger. "Commander Hale," Moran said, gesturing awkwardly. "This is Arya Solan from the Etherean colonies." "Commander," she said, her voice soft yet steady. Her accent had a musical rhythm. Jace nodded curtly. "You're here for the cook position. Your credentials are fine." "But I was told nothing about that." He was staring at the small bundle strapped to her chest. The baby inside shifted, tiny hands pushing against the fabric. Arya lifted her chin slightly. "This is my daughter, Lyra. She's 7 months old." Jace's expression hardened. "This is a military outpost, not a nursery." "Then it must be a lonely place," she said quietly. "I can assure you she will not disturb my duties." The baby stirred again, letting out a small yawn. When her eyes opened, Jace froze. They were unlike any eyes he had ever seen. Deep violet, scattered with faint silver sparks that shimmered like starlight. The child stared straight at him, curious and unafraid. For a moment, something in his chest twisted, an old ache stirring where he thought nothing was left. He looked away sharply. "You'll have limited quarters near the galley. If you fail to follow regulations, you'll be sent back to the nearest transport hub." "Understood." Arya nodded. "Understood, Commander. Be ready in 30 minutes, he said. "The shuttle leaves then." As they boarded, Jace tried to ignore the faint warmth that filled the shuttle cabin. Arya sat quietly, holding her child close, reading from a datapad. The baby slept soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the hum of the engines. Jace found himself speaking without thinking. "You said you were from the Etherean colonies. What happened to your husband?" Arya's voice softened. "He was a biologist. When the Krell attacked, he stayed behind to protect his research. The plants he saved later became medicine for thousands of refugees." Jace nodded, saying nothing. He understood sacrifice. He had lived with it every day since the rift. After a long silence, Arya whispered, "Children adapt faster than adults. They carry hope even when the world burns." Jace almost smiled, almost. "Hope doesn't last long out here," he said. "Maybe not for those who've forgotten how to look for it," she replied. When the shuttle docked with the outpost, Jace found himself watching the child again. The silver in her eyes caught the light, shining faintly against the dark. It reminded him of the stars he once loved, before war had turned them cold. As Arya gathered her belongings, he gave a short order to the station's AI. "Prepare quarters near the galley. Install a cot. And make sure environmental settings match Etherean tolerance." Arya looked at him, surprised. "Thank you, Commander." He cleared his throat. "You start tomorrow. 0600 hours. Don't be late." When she left, the silence of the corridor closed around him again. But this time, it didn't feel entirely empty. As Jace walked back toward his quarters, he caught his reflection once more in the viewport glass. For the first time in years, the man staring back didn't look completely hollow. Somewhere behind his eyes, faint and fragile, something had begun to stir, something he wasn't ready to name yet. Out in the vast dark of space, Relay Station Kilo 7 continued its silent orbit. But deep within its metal walls, something human, something alive, had just awakened again. The lights of Relay Station Kilo 7 flickered softly against the steel corridors as Commander Jace Hale woke with a jolt. His breathing came fast, ragged, as if he'd just escaped drowning. Another nightmare, the same one. The Dauntless. Fire in the vacuum. Voices screaming through static until silence took them all. He sat on the edge of his bunk, sweat trickling down his neck despite the chill air. The chronometer read 2:43. Sleep would not return. It never did. Then he heard it. Faint, distant. A voice. Not an alarm. Not the hum of the reactors. A song. Curious, Jace stood and followed the sound barefoot through the dim-lit hallways. It drifted from the direction of the galley, a low, soothing melody that made the air itself seem softer. The words were foreign, not translated by his implants. Whatever language it was, it carried warmth and sorrow. He stopped at the doorway. Inside, Arya Solin paced slowly across the galley, her bare feet silent against the metal floor. The baby, Lyra, was pressed against her shoulder, awake but calm, her small violet eyes reflecting the faint light like tiny stars. Jace stayed in the shadows, not wanting to intrude. The melody was fragile, something private, like a memory whispered to the night. But Lyra turned her head suddenly, her silver-flecked eyes locking straight onto him. A faint, almost playful smile touched her lips. Arya followed her daughter's gaze and froze. "Commander," she said softly. "I didn't hear you come in." "You didn't," he said, stepping into the light. "You were singing. I'm sorry if it disturbed you." He shook his head. "It didn't. He stopped, searching for words he hadn't used in years. "It was peaceful." A faint smile crossed her face. "It's an old Etherean lullaby. My mother sang it to me. I suppose Lyra prefers it to silence." Jace nodded. "Most of us do." Arya tilted her head slightly, studying him with those calm blue eyes. "You don't sleep much, do you?" He gave a dry laugh. "Not lately." "The nightmares," she said quietly, as if stating a fact. Jace frowned. "How would you know that?" "We Ethereans are mildly empathic," she said. "We don't read thoughts, just feelings. Pain leaves a kind of vibration. Your quarters hum with it." That made him uncomfortable. He crossed his arms. "I'll try to hum more quietly." Arya's lips twitched. "Or you could let someone help." Before he could reply, Lyra reached out a tiny hand toward him, fingers opening and closing. Her violet eyes shone like reflections of another world. "She wants you to hold her," Arya said, surprised herself. "I don't hold babies. Maybe you should try." For a long moment, Jace just stood there, the weight of old habits keeping his hands still. Then something in Lyra's gaze broke through the armor around him. He reached out, awkward, hesitant, and Arya carefully placed the child in his arms. She was impossibly small, warm, fragile. Yet as soon as he held her, something shifted inside him. The endless tension that lived in his shoulders loosened. The echo of screams faded to nothing. Lyra made a soft cooing sound and pressed a tiny hand to his chest, right over the faint scar beneath his shirt, the one that marked where the Dauntless had burned him. "She's calm," Arya whispered, watching in wonder. "She never does that with strangers." Jace looked down at the baby's shimmering eyes. "What's in them?" "The silver." "Her father was Stellaran," Arya said quietly. "They were attuned to cosmic energy, light, sound, emotion. The elders say Stellaran infants see things adults can't. They see truth." Jace almost smiled. "Truth, huh? Poor kid. The galaxy's full of ugly things." "Maybe," Arya said softly. "But she's looking at you, and she's not afraid." The words hit him harder than he expected. Lyra yawned, her small face peaceful, and drifted into sleep against his chest. For a long moment, Jace stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid that if he did, the fragile calm would vanish. Then, very gently, he handed her back to Arya. "You should rest," she said, tucking Lyra against her. "You look like you haven't in years." "I haven't," Jace said. "But maybe tonight." He hesitated at the doorway, looking back one last time. Arya stood there with her child, both bathed in the pale light from the galley's viewport. Beyond them, the stars burned cold and distant, yet somehow, the station no longer felt as empty. As Jace returned to his quarters, a strange peace followed him. For the first time since the massacre, he lay down without dread. When sleep came, it brought no screams, no fire, no ghosts. Only the faint sound of a lullaby, and a pair of violet eyes glowing softly in the dark. Days passed aboard Relay Station Kilo 7, and something subtle began to change. The cold halls that once echoed with mechanical hums now carried traces of laughter. Faint, hesitant, but real. Commander Jace Hale, the man who once lived by schedules and silence, now found himself pausing outside the galley more often than necessary. He told himself it was to check on supplies, or to review maintenance logs, or to ensure station security remained tight. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was listening for the soft voice of Arya Solen and the small gurgling laughter of her baby, Lyra. It started as coincidence, seeing them during meal hours, hearing them in passing. But soon, Jace noticed a pattern forming. Each night, somewhere between 0200 and 0300, Arya would be in the galley. Sometimes humming, sometimes brewing her strange herbal teas that filled the air with sweet floral scents. And every night, Jace somehow found a reason to pass through that corridor. One night, she was already waiting. 2 steaming cups rested on the metal counter. "I brewed extra," she said with a soft smile. "For the commander who always inspects the ventilation system at 2 in the morning." Jace raised an eyebrow. "I like to ensure the air's breathable." Arya chuckled. "Then breathe this." She slid the cup toward him. "It's called sarin. Aetherian tea. It helps quiet the mind." He took a sip. It was smooth, faintly sweet, with an aftertaste like rain. "Not bad. Not bad," she echoed with mock seriousness. "That's high praise from the great Commander Hale." He smirked, a rare thing. "Don't push your luck." They sat in silence for a moment. Lyra lay in a makeshift crib beside them, playing with a small holographic bird that flitted around her tiny hands. Every so often, she looked up and giggled, a sound so pure it cut through the mechanical hum of the station like sunlight through fog. Arya broke the silence. "Do you ever miss it?" "Miss what?" "The sound of life," she said softly. "Before the war. Before all this metal." Jace stared at his reflection in the cup. There was life on the Dauntless. Laughter. Music on Fridays. "We thought we were untouchable." His voice dropped lower. Then the Krell came. Arya didn't speak. She just waited. "I was inspecting the auxiliary power core when they hit us," he continued. "The blast sealed the deck. I could hear them, my crew, over the comms. They screamed, then nothing. It took rescue teams 3 days to dig me out. I was the only one left breathing." Silence filled the room, heavy and respectful. Lyra, as if sensing the shift, cooed softly. Arya reached across the table, her azure fingers brushing his wrist. "We called it the burden of the last light," she said. "When a star dies, its light travels for centuries. Even after it's gone, that light still touches other worlds. Survivors are like that light. We carry memory and possibility." Jace looked at her, his voice rough. "You think survivors are supposed to keep shining?" "I think you already are," she said simply. The words hung in the air, quiet but powerful. Jace wanted to reply, but Lyra saved him from trying. The baby had rolled onto her stomach, reaching for him with tiny hands. "She wants you," Arya said, smiling. "Again. She's a strange kid. Maybe she just knows who she can trust." Jace hesitated, then lifted Lyra. She squealed happily and touched his face, fascinated by the rough stubble on his jaw. "She likes textures," Arya said softly. "Especially the ones we don't have. Aetherian men don't grow facial hair." "Maybe I should shave," Jace said. "No," Arya said too quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, it's good for her development." For the first time in years, Jace laughed. A real, unguarded laugh. It startled them both. "Careful, Commander," Arya teased gently. "If the crew logs hear that, they'll think the station's haunted." He smiled, small but genuine. "Maybe it is. Haunted by something good, for once." Arya's eyes softened. "You know, she doesn't reach for everyone. Lyra's drawn to light, not what she sees, but what she feels. Maybe she senses the same thing I do." Jace raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "That under all that armor and guilt," she said quietly, "there's still a man who wants to live." Before he could answer, a quiet alarm chimed, the faint tone of an incoming transmission. Duty cut through warmth like a blade. Jace stood abruptly. "Priority signal. I have to go." Arya nodded, though disappointment flickered in her eyes. "Of course, Commander." He paused at the door, glancing back. "Keep the tea warm. I'll need it." As he walked down the corridor toward the command deck, something strange stirred in his chest. Not the old ache of memory, but a quiet pull forward toward something new. He didn't know it yet, but the station wasn't just carrying transmissions through space anymore. It was carrying hope, small, fragile, and beginning to glow. The next morning, the stars outside Relay Station Kilo 7 burned a little brighter, or maybe it only seemed that way. Commander Jace Hale found himself pausing at the viewport longer than usual. His reflection didn't look quite as hollow. The dark circles under his eyes had faded. Even his shoulders didn't feel like they carried an entire galaxy anymore. But peace never lasts long in deep space. The station's comms system crackled to life with the sharp tone of an encrypted transmission. Incoming message, Earth Command, Priority Alpha. Jace straightened instantly, all traces of calm wiped away. He entered the command deck and keyed in his authorization. The screen blinked to reveal Admiral Corrin, a stern woman with eyes like cold steel. "Commander Hale," she said, "we've detected movement near your sector. A Krell scout vessel." Jace's heartbeat quickened. The name alone was enough to resurrect ghosts. "Confirmed. Without a doubt. Their energy signature matches their war cruisers from the Rift campaign. They're scanning the outer rim of your zone. Possibly recon, possibly bait." Jace's jaw tightened. "Orders, Admiral? Stay hidden. Gather intel if possible, but don't engage. Reinforcements from the Resolute are en route. ETA, 3 days. 3 days?" he repeated. "This station wasn't built for defense." "Then use your brain, Commander. You're good at impossible odds." The transmission ended, leaving the command deck eerily silent. Jace stared at the empty screen for several long seconds, his mind already moving. The Krell, the same monsters who had burned the Dauntless, were back, and they were close. He moved quickly, shutting down non-essential systems, dimming energy readings, and activating the outpost's ancient stealth mode. The lights faded to red standby. The hum of the reactors softened to a whisper. Kilo 7 became a shadow in the void. But he wasn't alone anymore. There were 2 others to protect. He made his way to the galley, where Arya Solin was preparing breakfast. The scent of something warm and earthy filled the air, a quiet comfort in the cold vacuum beyond. She looked up, instantly reading his expression. "What happened?" "A Krell scout ship," he said. "They're close. Too close." Her face paled, the luminous blue of her skin dimming slightly. "The Krell, they destroyed my colony. They killed." "I know," he said softly. "That's why we're going to stay dark and quiet. I'll handle the rest." She nodded slowly, holding her baby tighter. Lyra stirred, blinking sleepily, her tiny violet eyes reflecting worry she couldn't understand. For the next few hours, the station lived in half-light. Every sound, the hum of doors, the soft hiss of airlocks, felt louder, sharper. Jace worked non-stop, redirecting power, masking heat signatures, setting decoy beacons adrift to confuse sensors. At one point, he caught himself glancing at the small monitor showing the galley camera. Arya was there, gently feeding Lyra, whispering something in her musical language. The sight struck him like a heartbeat in the dark. This wasn't just another assignment anymore. He wasn't protecting an outpost, he was protecting them. An hour later, the sensors caught movement. A thin, jagged pulse across the radar grid. The Krell scout had entered visual range. Jace killed the external lights and held his breath as the sleek, reptilian vessel glided past. Its hull shimmered with faint green energy, scanning beams sweeping slowly through space like searchlights. Inside, even the ventilation systems seemed to hold their breath. Arya entered the command deck silently, Lyra in her arms. "Are they here?" "Passing," he whispered. "If they don't detect us in the next 5 minutes, we're safe." They stood together, side by side, eyes fixed on the blackness outside the viewport. The Krell ship drifted closer, close enough for its shadow to blanket the station in darkness. Lyra whimpered softly. Arya began to hum. That same lullaby. The notes were soft, low, calming. Jace realized her song wasn't just for the baby. It was for him too. The Krell ship paused, then turned. Slowly, its engines flared, and it drifted away into the starfield. Only when its signal faded completely did Jace exhale. "They're gone. For now," Arya said. He nodded. "They'll be back. I can feel it." As if the universe wanted to confirm his words, The comm system blinked with a new message, this one encrypted in a foreign code. The computer translated automatically. Captain Hale, I am Dr. Vessar, former scientist of the Krell Dominion. I request immediate asylum. I possess critical intelligence about their mission. They are hunting something, stellar hybrids. Jace's stomach dropped. He turned sharply toward Arya. Her eyes widened, her grip on Lyra tightening. Hybrids. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The same thought struck them both. Lyra's silver-flecked eyes shimmered faintly in the red. Emergency light. The Krell weren't just scouting. They were hunting her. Jace took a breath, his voice low and steady. Pack what you need. Get to the emergency shelter near the galley. Don't come out until I tell you. Jace. Go, he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'll meet this scientist myself. As she hurried away, the shadows seemed to thicken around him. The hum of the ship, the pulse of the stars, everything quieted to a tense stillness. He looked out the viewport once more. The Krell ship had vanished into the dark, but he knew it hadn't gone far. This time, they weren't facing a nameless enemy. This time, they were after something precious. And Jace Hale, haunted, broken, human, was ready to make them regret it. The emergency lights flickered through the corridors of Relay Station Kilo 7, bathing everything in a nervous crimson hue. Commander Jace Hale stood before the docking bay controls, his pulse steady but his mind racing. Outside, a small escape pod drifted closer, an old Krell design, scarred, unstable, leaking faint radiation. If it was a trap, it was a clever one. But if it wasn't, it could be the only warning they'd get. He entered his command override. AI, isolate docking bay 2. Full quarantine. Secondary terminal only. The voice of the station's AI responded, cold and calm. Confirmed. Bay 2 sealed. External approach in 30 seconds. Jace exhaled and gripped the sidearm at his hip. He wasn't afraid of dying. He just refused to die for nothing, not when Arya and Lyra were still aboard. He'd seen enough ghosts for one lifetime. The pod connected with a metallic clang. Steam hissed from the airlock as decompression began. Jace watched through the thick glass barrier. The figure inside the pod was smaller than most Krell warriors, thinner, and wrapped in a dark, torn cloak. When the inner door opened, the alien stepped forward, not with the swagger of a soldier, but the hesitation of someone exhausted by fear. Captain Hale, it rasped through the translator. I am Vessar, Science Division, 3rd rank. I mean no harm. Jace kept his weapon raised. Your Krell. Was, Vessar corrected, lifting both clawed hands. I defected. The Krell Dominion hunts me now, the same way they hunt your child. Jace's finger twitched on the trigger. You'll want to explain that sentence. Vessar blinked, the membrane over its eyes glinting silver. They detected a stellar resonance when their scout ship scanned this sector. It matches an ancient energy, one found only in stellar hybrids. They believe such children can manipulate cosmic frequencies, energy they want to weaponize. And what happens to these hybrids? Jace asked, though he already knew the answer. None survive. The words hit like a gut punch. Images flashed in his mind. Lyra's glowing eyes, her tiny hand against his chest, the calm that always followed her touch. A child who saw beyond fear. A child they wanted to dissect. Jace lowered his weapon slowly, but didn't holster it. Why help us? Vessar's voice trembled, more emotion than he expected from a Krell. Because I built the scanners that found them. I watched my work twisted into tools for slaughter. I will not let them use another child to feed their war. He reached into his cloak carefully and held up a small data crystal. This contains their codes, fleet positions, and their next target. But their hunting party is already on the way. 3 soldiers, elite, trained to capture without killing. Without killing, Jace repeated, his voice hard. How thoughtful. You have 6 hours before they repair their weapon systems, Vessar said. After that, they will erase this station. Jace's mind was already in motion, mapping escape routes, defensive choke points, power circuits he could reroute for traps. 6 hours is plenty. Plenty to run? The Krell asked. To make them regret coming here. He keyed his comm unit. Arya, it's me. Stay in the shelter. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Understood. Her voice came through, tight but steady. Understood. Jace, please. I'll keep her safe, he cut in. Both of you. Silence, then a whisper. We believe you. He turned back to Vesar. You want asylum? You've got it. But you're going to earn it. Vesar nodded. What must I do? Help me turn this station into a graveyard for your hunters. They moved fast. Jace guided the alien through the maintenance tunnels, showing him the old systems that still worked and the ones held together by stubbornness and luck. Vesar's scaled fingers danced over the control panels with surprising skill. I can modify the spectral array, he said. Create a false stellar signal, strong enough to draw them away from the galley. Do it, Jace ordered. That'll buy us time. While Vesar worked, Jace prepared his weapons, an outdated pulse rifle, a shock baton, and an old combat knife from the Dauntless. He ran his thumb along its scarred blade, the last relic of the ship he'd lost. The alarm blared once. Contact, said the AI. 3 hostiles detected in outer access tunnels. Jace met Vesar's eyes. How long for your decoy? 2 minutes. You have one. The Krell hissed in frustration, but doubled his pace. Sparks flew as he fused components not meant to meet. Jace could already feel it, the shift in the air, the almost electric tension that came before violence. His body remembered what his mind had tried to bury. The rhythm of battle. The clarity of danger. Done, Vesar announced. Good. Then you're coming with me. They moved together through the narrow tunnels, guided by emergency lights. Every echo sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked alive. At a junction, Jace stopped. We split here. You get to the lab and amplify that signal. I'll intercept the first one near the galley. Vesar hesitated. You will face them alone? Jace's mouth curved into something halfway between a grin and a snarl. I'm human. We don't do alone. We do outnumbered. The alien tilted his head. You are a strange species, Captain Hale. Jace started moving again, his boots silent against the metal floor. That's why we're still here. He tapped his comm once more. Arya, listen carefully. If you hear fighting, don't open the shelter. Not for anything. There was a pause, then her trembling whisper. Just come back. He allowed himself one breath before the soldier in him took over completely. Always. As he reached the galley, the lights dimmed further. The shadows stretched long, broken only by the faint flicker of the emergency beacon. The silence pressed in, thick, heavy, alive. Then he saw it. A flicker of movement at the far end of the corridor. A shape. Tall, scaled, armored. The first Krell hunter. Jace tightened his grip on the knife, his eyes cold and focused. He wasn't the man who had crawled from the wreckage of the Dauntless anymore. He wasn't just a survivor. He was a guardian now. And for the first time in years, Commander Jace Hale was ready to fight for something worth living for. The corridor outside the galley was silent, too silent. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as Commander Jace Hale crouched in the dark, his pulse slow, steady, controlled. The hum of the life support vents above masked the faint scrape of his boots against the floor. Somewhere ahead, something moved, a whisper of claws brushing metal, the faint shimmer of adaptive armor bending light around a hidden figure. The Krell hunter was already here. Through his visor's low-light filter, Jace caught a distortion, just enough to mark its shape. 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's patience. The alien's breathing was deep and steady, the kind that came from creatures built for stalking. Jace exhaled slowly and shut off his visor's illumination. If the Krell used motion sensors or thermal imaging, light would betray him. This was going to come down to instinct. He took one silent step forward, then another. The galley's hanging utensils swayed slightly in the recycled air, metal clinking so faintly it could almost be imagination. Then the sound came, a faint metallic click. He dove sideways a split second before a neural disruptor bolt tore through the space he'd just occupied, burning a smoking hole into the wall. Jace rolled, came up on one knee, and fired a short burst from his pulse rifle. Blue-white plasma lit the corridor, carving arcs of light through the darkness. The Krell shimmered, armor flickering as its cloaking field faltered for a heartbeat. Scaled skin, dull green under the emergency lights. For black eyes locked on him, expressionless and cold. Human, the creature hissed, its translator warping the word. Surrender the hybrid. You may live. Jace's jaw tightened. You people never change your script. He fired again, aiming for the knees. The pulse shot struck the Krell's armor, scorching but not penetrating. The alien lunged forward with terrifying speed, knocking the rifle aside and driving Jace backward into the wall. Pain exploded across his ribs, but his training kicked in. He twisted, using the Krell's own weight to pivot and slam his knife up into a gap beneath its shoulder plate. The blade sank in halfway before the alien roared, backhanding him so hard he hit the galley counter and dropped his weapon. Stars burst behind his eyes. Blood trickled from his mouth. The hunter loomed over him, raising the crackling disruptor staff for the final strike. The weapon hissed with blue energy, enough to paralyze him permanently. Last warning, the Krell rasped. The child. Jace's eyes flicked to the side, just for a moment, to the storage hatch a few meters away. Behind that door, Arya and Lyra waited in silence. His reason, his family, his everything. He spat blood and smiled. Come and take her. As the staff came down, Jace rolled sideways, grabbing a fallen plasma torch from the counter. He thumbed it on, the bright white flame bursting to life. He jammed it upward into the underside of the Krell's helmet. The air filled with the smell of burning composite and ozone. The hunter howled, staggering backward, armor melting at the edges. Jace didn't stop. He swung the torch like a blade, forcing the creature toward the galley's open vent shaft. A quick shove, and the hunter stumbled, losing footing for a crucial instant. That's when Jace grabbed a heavy steel pot from the counter and hurled it into the creature's exposed neck joint. The clang echoed through the corridor, followed by the sickening crunch of armor plates collapsing. The Krell fell to one knee, choking, armor short-circuiting as sparks erupted across its body. You picked the wrong human, Jace said through clenched teeth, and slammed the torch home one last time. The alien convulsed once, then went still. For a long moment, only the hiss of burnt wiring filled the air. Jace stood over the body, breathing hard, bruised and bleeding, but alive. Then a voice echoed down the corridor. Remarkable. He turned sharply, rifle raised again, but it was Vesar, the defected Krell scientist. The alien's large eyes gleamed with something like awe. You defeated a hunter-class soldier with improvised tools. Your kind truly thrives on chaos. Jace glared at him. Is your decoy working? Vesar nodded. Yes. The other two hunters are tracking the false Stellaran signature in the lab. They'll be trapped there soon. Then let's make sure they stay that way. Together, they raced through the maintenance tunnels. Vesar's modified device pulsed faintly in his claws. They will sense something is wrong soon. We have perhaps 10 minutes. That's 9 more than I need. They reached the lab just as the air vibrated with movement. 2 shimmering figures appeared on the far side of the room, cloaked and scanning, unaware of the explosive canisters Jace had already positioned. He activated his comm. Arya, stay locked down. Do not come out. Her voice, calm but trembling. We're safe. Please, Jace. Come back to us. I will, he promised, and cut the channel. The first hunter deactivated its cloak, and that's when Jace triggered the trap. The lab exploded in a flash of blinding white light and compressed sound. The shockwave hurled both hunters into the walls, their cloaks shorting out. One tried to rise, screeching something guttural, but Jace was already there. He fired a single, perfect pulse shot through its chest. The creature crumpled. The second managed to swing a blade, but Vesar lunged from the side, driving a plasma scalpel into the creature's throat. The fight was over. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. The only sound was Jace's breathing, and the faint cooing of Lyra over the comm feed, alive, unharmed. Vesar turned to him. You fight like no other species I've ever seen. Jace wiped the blood from his jaw. That's because no other species has something worth losing. The scientist tilted his head. Perhaps that's what makes you dangerous. Or what makes us human. A sharp alarm suddenly blared through the station. The voice of the AI echoed coldly. Warning. Krell scout vessel returning. Weapons active. Jace's stomach dropped. They're coming back. Vesar's frills flattened. They've repaired their systems faster than expected. Jace holstered his rifle, straightened his back, and looked out toward the viewport. Then we finish this. No more running. No more hiding. He turned toward Vesar, his voice calm, lethal, certain. You wanted to make up for what they've done? Help me hack their ship. Vesar's eyes widened. Hack a Krell warship? That's suicide. Jace smiled, a tired, dangerous smile. Suicide for them. As the alarm lights flashed red, Jace felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not revenge. Not survival. Resolve. Because this time, He wasn't fighting for orders or glory. He was fighting for a lullaby in the dark, and a child with violet eyes who had reminded him what it meant to be alive. The command center of Relay Station Kilo 7 pulsed with red light and warning tones. Outside, the void came alive with motion, the sleek, curved shadow of a Krell scout ship closing in fast, its weapon ports glowing with lethal emerald light. Commander Jace Hale stood at the main console, his uniform torn and stained, one hand pressed to a bandaged wound on his side. Beside him, Vesar, the defected Krell scientist, worked furiously at the secondary terminal. The air crackled with tension, but Jace's mind was sharp, clear, focused. He wasn't the haunted survivor of the Dauntless anymore. He was something else now, something dangerous. Status, Jace barked. Vesar's scaled hands flew over the controls. Their targeting systems are online. They will fire in 60 seconds. Then we have 60 seconds to teach them what happens when they pick the wrong target. From the corner of the room, Arya Solen appeared, clutching Lyra close to her chest. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed fear. The shelter couldn't block the sound. I had to come. You shouldn't be here, Jace said automatically, but his voice softened as he looked at her. It's going to be all right. Arya stepped closer, her voice steady. If this is the end, we face it together. Jace met her gaze, the corners of his mouth lifting just slightly. It's not the end. It's a beginning. Outside, the Krell ship's weapons charged, green light gathering in its forward cannon. Jace turned to Vesar. Tell me we have control of their comm link. Partial, Vesar hissed. Their encryption is adaptive, but the backdoor you forced into their system is holding. If we time this correctly, we can reverse their targeting sequence. Then let's give them a taste of human creativity, Jace said, his fingers flying across the console. He linked the station's communication grid to the Krell Command AI, rerouting their targeting parameters into a feedback loop. When they fire, their weapons will recognize their own heat signature as hostile. The blast will turn back on them. Vesar looked up, startled admiration flashing in his reptilian eyes. Ingenious. Brutal, but ingenious. Jace smiled grimly. That's humanity in 2 words. The station shuddered as the Krell's first cannon fired. A beam of green energy streaked through the dark, striking the empty void ahead, and then, with a violent shimmer, bent backward. The weapon's power core overloaded. The enemy ship blossomed into fire. Jace watched as the explosion painted the stars with light. His knuckles were white on the console, but his voice was calm when he said, "Target neutralized." Captain Hale, the AI announced. Incoming transmission, UEV Resolute. Earth Command Vessel. The main screen flickered to life. Admiral Corrin's face appeared, framed by the steel bridge behind her. We saw the detonation from 6 sectors away, she said. Report, Commander. Enemy vessel destroyed, Jace said simply. Station intact. Minimal casualties. Her eyes softened, just for a moment. You've outdone yourself again, Hale. Earth Command could use that kind of fire on the front lines. The Resolute will take over station duties, but I want you aboard as first officer. Jace hesitated, glancing toward Arya and Lyra. On one condition, Admiral. Condition? They come with me. Officially. Arya Solen, civilian consultant. Lyra Hale, dependent. He paused, then added quietly, my family. There was a long silence on the line. Then the Admiral smiled faintly. Family, huh? It's been a long time since I heard that word in a report. Approved, Commander. Welcome back to active duty. The screen blinked out. The red lights dimmed. The hum of the engines softened to a calm background thrum. Arya exhaled slowly, tears shining in her eyes. You did it. No, Jace said, looking down at her and the small violet-eyed child in her arms. We did. Vesar turned from his console, his voice low. Your people are extraordinary. You fight not because you seek conquest, but because you cannot bear to lose what you love. Jace met his gaze. That's what makes us human. The alien scientist gave a slow nod. Perhaps there's hope for this galaxy after all. Later, in the quiet of the crew quarters, Jace sat on the edge of his bunk, the soft glow of the viewport lighting the room. Arya leaned against his shoulder, her silver hair cascading down his arm. Lyra slept peacefully in her cradle, the faint shimmer in her violet eyes reflecting the stars beyond. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. Jace reached out, taking Aria's hand. When I lost the Dauntless, I thought the universe had taken everything from me. Turns out, it was just waiting to give something better. She smiled softly. And what's that? He glanced at the sleeping child. A reason to live. A reason to fight. A reason to hope. Outside the viewport, the stars pulsed. Not cold, not distant, but alive. A soft blue light flickered across the horizon, like a heartbeat in the dark. Arya followed his gaze. What is it? Jace's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. A stellar end signal. Distant. Faint. But real. She looked at him, realization dawning. Others. Maybe, he said quietly. And if the Krell are still hunting them. He stood, pulling on his jacket, the commander returning to his posture, but with something new behind his eyes, resolve. Then we'll find them first. Arya smiled. Still can't rest, can you? Rest, Jace said, his lips curving into a faint grin. Humans don't rest. We rebuild. He turned one last time toward the viewport. The stars reflected in his eyes, the same fire, the same defiance that once carried humanity through every war and loss. Beyond the station, the universe stretched wide and endless, full of danger and promise. And for the first time in years, Commander Jace Hale wasn't afraid of it. He was ready, ready to protect, ready to lead, ready to prove, once again, that even in the darkest corners of space, humanity still burns brighter than any star.